Today we're going to learn how to factor a different way. Yesterday we did GCF and backwards FOIL doing two binomials, and we also did dots. Well, today we can't do that because if you take a look at our examples 1 and 2, we have 4 terms in those examples. And they don't have any like terms that we can put them together, so we have to leave it as it is. So the only way to factor 4 terms is to do what's called factor by grouping. This is where you're going to group the terms with a common factor. You're going to try to find a common factor when grouping. All right, so let's just get right to it. So you're going to need to group the first 2 terms and the last 2 terms. And then you're going to find the GCF for each grouping. All right, so let's look at our grouping on the left. If I take a look at that binomial now, I can GCF out a 7x and end up with x plus 2y. If I take a look at my second grouping, I can GCF out a positive 6y squared out of that binomial and end up with x plus 2y. And in doing so, I achieved what I needed to, a common factor. So once you've achieved a common factor, you then put your 2 GCFs together to make the one binomial in your answer, and then you bring down one common factor to make the other. So there's your final answer. So again, when you have 4 terms, the only way to factor is to group them. You group the first 2 with the last 2, you look for a GCF, that will give you a common factor in each term. And then you put the GCFs together and bring down one common factor. Okay, let's move on to number 2. In number 2, it's got 4 terms again. I can't put any like terms together, so the only way I can factor this is to do grouping. I'm going to group the first 2 and the last 2. In the first 2, I will be able to GCF out a 2x and end up with 3r plus s. In the last grouping, I can GCF out a y, but what kind of y do I want to use to GCF so that I get a common factor? You're right, I'm going to want to pull out a negative y. In doing so, that's going to help me to change my sign. So when I GCF out a negative y, I'll end up with a positive 3r plus s. And that helped me to get my common factor. So now I'm ready to put my 2 GCFs together and bring down one common factor to form my answer. Okay, let's move on. In example number 3, again, I have 4 terms. I can't combine any of them. So in order to factor this, I'm going to have to do the method called grouping. I'm going to group my first 2 and my last 2. I'm going to GCF a factor out of the first grouping, 2a minus 1. I really don't have anything to GCF out. When there's nothing there, you should be able to GCF out a 1. So we're going to do that. I'm going to GCF out a 1 because dividing anything by 1 is itself, and nothing's going to change, but at least I was able to have a GCF. On the second pair, I can GCF out a b, but what kind of a b am I going to want to GCF to hopefully get a minus in the middle and get rid of that negative in the front? Oh, you're right, a negative b. And in doing so, I'm going to end up with 2a minus 1. So the GCF of a 1 in the first grouping really helped me because I was able then to find a common factor. So I'm going to put together my GCFs of a 1 and a minus b together and then bring down my 2a minus 1 as my second factor to get my answer. So again, when you can't find a GCF, you can always use 1 because anything divided by 1 is itself. All right, we're going to now factor trinomials, just like we did yesterday, but this time the a value is not going to be a 1, so it's not going to be as easy as we did yesterday. We are going to use the method of going backwards with FOIL, so backwards FOIL. But we're going to have to do it maybe a couple of times because this method is called trial and error. And that's exactly what you're going to do. You're probably going to try, you're going to err, and you're going to have to try again. Okay, let's take a look at number 4. I can't GCF, so I'm going to set up my two binomials because I have a squaring. Factors of a 2x squared, that will be 2x and x. Now, factors of a negative 3. So off to the side, I'm going to list all the factors of a negative 3. I have negative 3, positive 1, positive 3, negative 1. Okay, neither of those pairs of factors will add to give me the negative 5 like I want. And they're really not supposed to because of this 2 right here. So I'm just going to have to plug them in and see what works. And if they don't work, I erred, and I'm just going to have to try again. Okay, so I'm going to start off with a minus 3 here and a plus 1 here. Now I do know in FOIL, first, 2x times x is going to give me 2x squared, so I don't even have to bother checking that. And last, negative 3 times a positive 1 is going to give me the negative 3. So really, I just need to find out if I'm going to achieve the negative 5 in the middle. So I only have to check outer and inner, because outer and inner are the two that combine to give me the term in the middle. So 2x times 1 is 2x, and a negative 3 times x is a negative 3x, and if I combine them together, I get a negative x. Is that what I wanted in the middle? No, I wanted a negative 5, so it didn't work. So I tried and I erred. So I'm going to have to try again. Okay, so I'm going to set up my two binomials. And I'm going to do 2x and x. But this time, instead of disregarding the negative 3, positive 1, and moving on to positive 3, negative 1, I'm going to take those two factors and switch them around. And if it doesn't work this time, then I'm going to move on to the positive 3, negative 1. So, okay, I'll put the plus 1 here and the minus 3 here. I'll do outer and inner to see if I got it. So I have negative 6x plus x gives me a negative 5x. And that's exactly what I wanted, so I did get it. So my answer for factoring for 2x squared minus 5x minus 3 will be 2x plus 1 and x minus 3. Now again, remember, when you try your first pair of factors, if it doesn't work, before you discard them, you flip them around and try them again, because in this case, it worked. If it wouldn't have worked, then you could have crossed them out and moved to the second pair. All right, let's take a look at number 5. With number 5, I have 3x squared minus 7x plus 2. I can't GCF it, so I'm going to set up my two binomials. The only thing that'll give me 3x squared is 3x and x. I'm going to list all the factors of a positive 2 to the right. So factors of a positive 2 would be 1 times 2 and negative 1, negative 2. Because a negative times a negative is a positive. Now I'm looking to achieve a negative 7 in the middle. I need a negative 7. So right away, I know that I don't even have to try positive 1, positive 2. Because a positive plus a positive is going to give me a positive, and I want a negative. So I really only have to try negative 1, negative 2. I just have to decide who to put first and who to put second. So I'll have to place them in, do outer and inner, see if it works. If it doesn't, switch them around. I'm going to let you finish that one on your own, and then tomorrow in class we're going to go over it. Let's move on. Let's take a look at number 6. With number 6, you have 4x squared plus 11x minus 20. I can't GCF it, so it looks like it's going to be the dreaded trial and error. So I'm going to set up my two binomials. Now, for 4x squared, I can have a couple of things. I can have 4x and x, which I'll write, or I can even have 2x and 2x. So this one could be a little hard if I don't get it right away, because if I exhaust all the possibilities with all my factors of a negative 20 using 4x and x and nothing works, I'm then going to have to try all over again with 2x and 2x. But let's start with 4x and x and see how far we get. Okay, so now we're going to list all the factors of a negative 20 on the side. All right, for negative 20, I'm going to have negative 5, positive 4, positive 5, negative 4. Negative 20, positive 1, positive 20, negative 1. Positive 2, negative 5, whoops, sorry. Let's erase that. Positive 2, negative 10, positive 10, negative 2. I don't think I have any more factors of a negative 20 out there. Okay, so I'm ready to do trial and error. So I'm going to place the negative 5 here and the positive 4 here. I'm going to do outer and inner to see if I can achieve a positive 11. 4x times 4 gives me 16x. Negative 5 times x gives me a negative 5x. If I put them together, I get a positive 11x. Boy, I got lucky. I got it on the first try. So my answer is 4x minus 5 times x plus 4. Now, will you always get it on the first try? No. This just happened to be a lucky problem for me. So let's review. Because 4x squared can be either written as 4x times x, or we could have written it as 2x and 2x. Okay? We're just going to have to be careful on how we start and what we do. And I got lucky because putting negative 5 and a positive 4 there worked out for me. If it didn't, I would have had to turn them around, try it again. If it didn't, cancel those guys out, move on to the next pair, and yada, yada, yada. And if after going through the whole set here of factors of a negative 20 and none of them worked, I then would have had to go and use 2x and 2x. So do you see why this is called trial and error? Because again, you're doing a lot of tries and you could have a lot of errors until you achieve the right answer. Okay, go back and finish number 5 and bring it to class with you tomorrow and we'll see how well you did. Have a good evening.